Welcome back from the break. My name is Fredrik. I work with the South African performance team, where I mainly focus on finance and education. So over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to take you through some reports that I use on a daily basis, reports that I hope are going to help you make more informed decisions and give you some data points that you can use to challenge your AMs and internal stakeholders on decisions that you want to make and direction that you want to take with your campaigns. So I've been at Google for close to 4 years now. I started off in inside sales, where I didn't have the luxury of having AdWords data, but I every now and then got my hands on analytics data. So yesterday, someone asked how we can take what we're learning here today and yesterday forward at our companies and get the ball rolling on that side of things as well. So with analytics in mind specifically, one of the times I had to convince a big brand to actually start using AdWords, it took me 2 years to do it. But thanks to analytics data, we were able to set really good and clear goals to measure against, so everyone felt quite comfortable with what we decided to do when we actually started the campaigns. So, every one of you have probably heard the old saying of half of my advertising money being wasted in one way, shape, or another. Now, from where I'm sitting, I actually don't think that holds true anymore, because we can measure almost anything, so we can manage it. I think the challenge more today is that we end up in situations where we get analysis paralysis, because there's just so much data we can use, and it's so easy to get lost in that data. So with these reports, I hope that I can highlight how to make that data more actionable for you guys. So the very first report, I should say that the way I'm going to go through this is to highlight the reason why I use these reports. Then I'm going to show you how to pull it. And lastly, I'm going to give suggestions on actions you can take or topics that you can raise with your account management team. If you have any questions at that time, then please feel free to shout out, and we'll throw the Android mic around and clear up anything. But there's also going to be about 15 minutes at the end for any questions that you may have. Or we can use that for an early start on lunch and beat the other group to it. Right, so the very first report that I look at, and this is usually the first thing I go to, is a date range comparison. Have you guys asked your Google team for benchmarks, vertical benchmarks, market benchmarks, anything like this? No? Well, if you haven't, then you should do so, because we can deliver that data. And I would say that it has its place when you're looking at planning the big picture to see where you're at and basically what you need to do to get to where perhaps the largest advertisers are. But I don't think it's the most actionable thing that you can ask from us, and I don't think it's the most actionable thing that we can deliver to you. So rather than asking for market benchmarks, as was mentioned yesterday, the real power from benchmarking comes when you compare yourselves to yourselves. So by going to, is it showing up? Am I standing in the way? No. So by going to the date range and opting to compare and then applying a second date range, it's going to break down the interface for you with all the same metrics over the primary time frame or the secondary time frame. It's going to show you the performance difference in absolute terms and a percentage change. So that data you can then use to look at, are you actually developing your campaigns in the right directions? Did the last performance optimization or general optimizations you did actually deliver the results you were expecting? So from there you can then decide on should you be continuing in the direction you were already heading, or should you maybe go back and look at what you did and what might have gone wrong. Overall, you'll see the CPA changes, which for me, being a performance-based AM, account manager, is the key to most things I suggest. But I also think that just looking at the CPA actually limits us from doing a whole lot of things that need to be done in order to build on your business and generate more profit. So in most of these reports, I'm going to come back to this profit thinking and see how we can increase on that. But overall, a very, very simple report to pull, but extremely useful when deciding on directions in which to head to. Any questions so far? Cool. So let's jump on to another area in the AdWords interface, so segmenting the data. Now, many of the things, actually all of the things that I'll show you here are also available in analytics. So I'll highlight a couple of segments from there later on. But when we go through this, do think of how you could apply these segments in analytics to get numbers on user behavior as well. Now, top versus other is a segment that I go through as well on a daily basis. Because what we've seen is that usually top positions actually get the lion's share of traffic and deliver the lion's share of conversions. So the questions here again become really a question around profitability and conversion volume. So we need to look at the CPA because of the volume of top positions compared to other positions in order to then make decisions around bidding. And because we actually do see that most conversions happen from the top positions, we usually feel like it's worthwhile pushing for visibility on those top spots. And that's why many conversations with us will rotate back to bidding in one way, shape, or another. Actions that you may want to take from this is, depending on what you find in top versus other, is to start talking about automated rules in your accounts to see if perhaps you can make it a little bit easier for you guys to make sure that you hit those top spots if they're profitable. Or then maybe it's worthwhile trying to optimize your visibility on the other positions in order to maintain the profitability and then try to drive more volume through those and try to minimize the top position impressions that you're getting. All depends on what's happening with your sales. It all depends on how you actually generate your revenue. And the more you can share of that information with us, the better equipped we'll be to then help you with things like automated rules. Another thing that this may lead to is to look at automated bidding. So I'm a huge fan of Conversion Optimizer because I've seen some really, really good results with some of my clients who've chosen to opt in for Conversion Optimizer, which basically means they've given full control of their bids and moved to real-time bidding. And then AdWords uses a lot of backend info that we don't have access to when we adjust bids manually, and then tries to drive conversion volume at a CPA target. Now, if you're not 100% comfortable with looking at or allowing AdWords to actually take over all of your bidding, then enhanced CPCs would be a really good topic to cover with your account management team. What enhanced CPC does is it adjusts the bid based on what it thinks will convert to a certain percent, and it does so on a certain percent of eligible impressions. And where we then can add more value is that we can actually pull reports to show you what has those automated bids actually generated for you in terms of conversions and at what cost, compared to what the manual bid that you've chosen to run has delivered during the same time. So that will be a very interesting point where you again can choose on whether to continue managing your bids manually, if you'll see if there's something that needs to be optimized, or perhaps at that time you'll be more comfortable with going with the full automation of Conversion Optimizer, which I can't speak highly enough of. So definitely a valuable report, again, quite easy to pull, and it'll give you a lot of topics for conversation internally when it comes to profitability, and with us when it comes to optimizing campaigns. Anything you want to cover in more depth here? No? So, in that segmentation view, you'll also get device. So what it does is to break down all the metrics by device. So you'll have your desktop, tablet, and of course mobile. And a friend of mine actually said that he overheard someone else say that you don't want to be the guy who says that global warming isn't happening. It is happening, just like mobile is happening. Fortunately, when it comes to actually seeing the stats of that, you don't need to go any further than your AdWords account and run this segmentation in order to see what mobile actually delivers for your business. And you'll see the cost that it carries and be able to then start looking at how to optimize that in one way or another, if either increase or decrease or optimize something. So if you're happy with the performance, the profitability of the leads that you're getting, the quality of them, then it may be worthwhile to discuss the potential of what might happen if you increased your mobile bid adjustments, for example. Another interesting thing to look at is that if you're not 100% happy with what's happening with mobile traffic, is to then look at your campaigns and seeing if you're actually allowing the campaigns to deliver the best possible experience to the user. For example, say call extensions. I know, at least I'm lazy enough to call someone rather than read something myself. So that, to me, is a much better experience when relevant. Another thing what you also see is that if conversions actually aren't as good as you'd expected or you hoped, then there may be something that you can optimize with your mobile asset. So a key indicator of that you can then dig into more closely in analytics, and we'll cover that as well in a bit more detail at the later part of my presentation. So anything that you'd like to ask about this? Yep.
What is considered mobile in AdWords?
What is considered mobile?
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, so it's basically high-end devices. Smartphones would be mobile, and then feature phones would be in a category of its own.
Okay. So no, tablets are separate, I know, but tablets in between?
That is actually a very good question. To be honest, I haven't looked into it, how it would categorize that device. So what we'll do is, if I'll grab your name afterwards, or if you have time after the presentation, we'll look into it and sort that out. And anyone who's interested is welcome to hang around and figure that out. Cool. Anything else? All right. So the next segmentation actually is the result of campaign experiments. So is anyone currently running campaign experiments? Yep, one person. Excellent. Has everyone heard of campaign experiments? Yes? No? Maybe? Yeah. Okay. So campaign experiments, they're set in campaign settings, and what it allows you to do is to test a variable on a certain percentage of eligible impressions. So, for example, for argument's sake, let's stick with the bid theme. If you wanted to test the impact of increasing your bids by, say, 200%, just to make it extreme, then you might not want to test that on 100% of your traffic, because the cost might just become intolerable and profitability might crash. So rather than do that, you might want to test it by say, having 80% of eligible impressions be delivered with your current bid, and 20% be delivered with a plus 200% increase. So the campaign runs for 30 days, or you can cut it off earlier as well. And during that time, it delivers those impressions at random when relevant. So you're actually able to compare apples with apples, basically. So, for example, if there is something that happens in the market and gets a lot of publicity, which would then be a fair assumption that it leads to a massive spike in queries, then if you were running that 200% increase for 100% of impressions during that time, and then compared it to a lower bid, it really wouldn't give you the same or comparable data, because the external environment is completely different. So it's very, very cool since it actually runs this and makes things comparable. And so it's basically a safety net. Now, when you create the campaign and set the experimental variable that you want, and then start the campaign and break it down through this segmentation, the same metrics are going to again be broken out for the control group and the experimental group. So not only will you be able to see the actual numbers, but you'll also be able to see the statistical significance of that performance change. So you'll see if it actually does deliver the results that you were expecting. And if we did increase bids by 200%, what I'd be specifically interested in seeing is, are we actually driving conversions by such a high percent more that the average CPA actually decreases? And to take this into action and talking points with your account management team, if you are running Conversion Optimizer, you actually can test having different target CPAs. So that's an experiment that I've run with several of my clients. And with some of them, we've actually seen that by increasing the target CPA and tolerating that potential of paying more per lead, we actually did increase the volume by so much that the average for that ad group decreased. So they were getting more conversions at an average of less, which of course was a huge win. Now it didn't work for all ad groups, but it gave us a really good indication of which direction to move to in order to increase their business. So definitely raise campaign experiments with your account managers, because it's going to be a way for you to test in a safe way, and it's going to be able to also test if our theories hold true. So what could be better than being able to show that what we've estimated that will actually happen and has a positive impact on your business. Any questions around this? Excellent. So let's move on to a hidden gem in the AdWords account. Now, the Dimensions tab gets overlooked really, really often and really easily. I don't know why. Maybe it's the naming of it, but it's actually something that I overlooked for probably the better part of my first 3 years here. When I then one day actually discovered what's in there, it quickly became one of my go-to places in the account. So as you see here to the right, that you'll find a lot of interesting data in here. And the first one I want to highlight is reach and frequency. So this becomes really relevant when we're talking about, I would say, remarketing specifically, but also display campaigning overall in terms of frequency capping. So I'm sure all of you have an experience of where you've been to a website, you've looked up a product and then been remarketed to. For me, I remember specifically a retailer and a pair of jeans that I was buying, and how I didn't buy them at first, got remarketed to, eventually went back and bought them. But even after I bought them, I was still receiving the same ad for ages. And to me, it actually started bordering harassment at that stage. So the jeans I got, they were exactly what I wanted. The delivery was really good. No complaints about the brand, but still, what I remember from the brand is that they kept on harassing me online. So a very bad experience for me in that case. That, of course, being an extreme thing. In the report that I've pulled here as an example, the thing I want to highlight, and one discovery that you might make in your own reports, is the fact that when we look at impressions and conversions, we actually see that after 3 impressions, it really doesn't deliver any more business to us until we get to 8. So a talking point with your account management team, again, is to look at what is the time lag in between those impressions, and what actually happens in between those impressions where we're still getting clicks and we're paying for them. And then the 8th impression that actually leads to a conversion. Question I would have for my account manager here is, isn't there a better way we can do this and use our budgets in order to make it more profitable? odds are that there is a way. So for example, if time lag is a good indicator, then you might want to create a remarketing campaign that works for the time that it takes to deliver those 3 impressions on average, then pauses until you get to the time of the 8th impression and runs again. And that hopefully would then deliver more value to your campaigns. Anything here that you'd like to ask or deep dive into? No? So, the following report then is day of week. Now, every business is of course different. Every site is different, so the experience will be different. Even if the product might be fairly similar, there's probably something that separates your business from the competitors. So that's why I would say it's a fair assumption to think that different days may be of different value and different significance for your business when it comes to sales and conversions. And with the day of week report, as you see, it's going to break down the week over the given period by day in order to show you what's happening. Now, not only does it highlight high value days, like in this example, where Wednesday seems to be the day that this advertiser would really have to make sure that they're out there because conversion volumes are really high. But it can also show and highlight days when your presence actually might not be as strong. Days that, for example, Sunday, if we just look at conversion rate, it's actually one of the highest during the week, but conversion volumes are the lowest. So if this is a question of, for example, auction pressure increasing on Sundays, then that's something that your account management team could discuss with you to see how you can push your visibility on that day. Or it may simply be a case of actually just optimizing your visibility that you have there. Because in this case, for example, a straightforward analysis would be to look at impressions which are actually less than half on Sunday from compared to Wednesday. So it looks like there just isn't that much demand for it on Sundays. But still a very interesting report to look at. Anything here that you want to discuss? All right. The last report that I wanted to highlight from AdWords is relating to a question that we often get around SEO. And that, unfortunately, is an area that we really can't go into too much. But if you do connect your AdWords with Webmaster Tools, then this report would start populating and showing you how organic and paid actually works together on certain keywords. And it may give you ideas around which way to move to and optimize for in your paid campaigns or in your SEO tasks. No. So, anything you want to ask about AdWords in general at this stage before we move on to analytics? All right. So, coming back to the point I made about analysis paralysis earlier, I think analytics is the place where this tends to happen most frequently. Now, I actually enjoy just cruising around an account, and yes, I do call it cruising around an account, because it's interesting to see the data that you can pull from there, and it gives me just ideas around what I can do. But if I want to make it something actionable, the big tip I have for you guys is to have a question in mind or have an outcome in mind that you want to get out of the next 5 minutes to an hour and a half that you're going to spend in analytics. Because working that backwards then is going to help you in browsing through the different metrics that we have in there and different reports and combining them to get what you want out of it. And then, of course, working with analytics, it's probably the best way, I would say, to ask consumers about what's happening in the market, specifically relating to you. So yesterday, I think it was, the theme was that if you don't know, ask. I would say that you're already being told, so how do you listen? That's the question, and that's what analytics really can help you with. And looking at this report is the first place where you can start listening to your potential customers and customers. So this report is a funnel visualization of a goal path. So they have, in this case, there's basically product, shopping basket, checkout, and confirmation. So when you set up a goal, and I'll walk through that in just a minute, you're able to actually set these steps in that path. What you see is a drop-off and a continuation from specific areas in that path. So if you see, for example, as in this case, it seems like payment method is a problem area there. For example, with only 57% going through. So what you might want to look at then is on that specific page where that step happens, are you making it clear enough what the payment methods are? Are you making it easy enough to actually then use those payment methods? And in a minute we'll talk about that more. So setting up goals, you'll need admin access to your analytics account. But then from admin, you choose goals and plus new goal. This plus new button, plus new something, is your best friend when it comes to setting things up in analytics, because it always opens up a workflow which is quite self-explanatory and will help you set the things in place that you need to measure what it is you want. When you do click on it, it brings us to a very relevant point that I wanted to make, particularly for branding advertisers. So I've been talking about conversions, I've been talking about sales, leads, CPAs, and what so very often gets overlooked is measuring your branding activity. So as you see here, you can actually use duration and page views as goals. Now, if you're a branding advertiser and you have a site, then it would be a fair assumption, I would say, that you probably have a reason for having that site. And you probably have a reason for publishing content on it. So why not measure against that reason? Even if it is just to have someone read through a page, you could measure that, for example, to make it an easy example, by time on site. Or if you want someone to land on a page and then measure if they like what they see on that page enough to actually continue, you could do that with page views. And at the end of the day, in some way, shape, or form, your business is probably generating revenue somehow. And if you're measuring this, then you can start tracking back from that revenue to see what was the actual value that you added to this process or the full chain with your branding activity. Now that's going to make it a lot easier for you to take these actions and present them internally, because you can directly show a value that's been added to that activity. But it's also going to make it a lot easier for you to work on your campaigns and optimize them towards whatever goal it is you have in place. So again, if you haven't got goals in place, then internally it's a very important conversation to have. But then do bring us into that conversation as well, so we can discuss on how we can put those goals in place and measure what it is that's happening. Now then, moving on to how it's set up. So once you choose a goal type, the workflow continues on to this page. And here, in order to create that funnel visualization, you'll just have to opt into the optional funnel. Then you create the steps here, so I've chosen to call it step 1 is almost done, step 2 is last step. And once you save that, the report is going to start populating. Any questions relating to this? All right. So in terms of the funnel visualizations showing you maybe weak links or areas of improvement in your conversion path, analytics allows you to create experiments as well. Now these ones are called then content experiments. So basically, if for example, you see that there's a huge drop-off in your shopping basket, then you may want to create an alternative version of that page where you maybe change the color of your continue button or checkout button. You maybe change the size of it. Maybe you do both. Maybe you rearrange it. Whatever you think is going to lead to a better and easier shopping experience. Now, you create the experiment from analytics, just as you would in AdWords, and the workflow opens up. So again, here we're able to determine how many percent of traffic should go to the original and how many percent of traffic should go to the alternative or alternatives. And then you drop a code snippet onto the original, and that starts dividing traffic that arrives according to the percentage you set. Now, what makes this so effective is that when users come back, and hopefully they will, they'll still see the version that they saw on the first time. So they won't be confused by seeing a lot of different versions while you're running the experiment. Also, you're able to set the confidence interval that you want to use in order to determine a winner. Once that's done, and you created the page, published it, added the code to the original, then analytics is going to start collecting the data again. And this time around, analytics is actually going to pronounce a winner for you. So you can directly see when analytics has seen that there's one version that's performing statistically better than the other, you can just implement that for all your traffic, and it's quite likely that that'll improve your performance. So again, a very, very useful thing to do. And this is the way that you can try to stay one step ahead of your customers or users. But that may actually turn out to be an impossible task, since we don't really know how preferences will change, and they change constantly. So the takeaway is to look at what features and functionalities and even colors you could change on your site and test, because I've actually seen bounce rates double and decrease again just by changing background colors and running experiments. So very small details can have a huge impact on site performance. Any questions relating to this? No? Okay, so we of course know that many of you use other channels as well outside of AdWords to run your business and advertise your business. So if, for example, you're running campaigns on social media, all you need to do is tag those campaigns or the ads there, and we'll be able to track them with analytics. Now, looking at it from an analytics perspective, one question that we very often get, and one question I'm sure that's going to be asked of you as well when you have these discussions internally, is what is the value of display really? In the AdWords interface, you'll see probably a whole lot of impressions. You'll see hopefully a whole lot of traffic, but conversions may be quite low and the CPAs may be quite high. So then it very quickly becomes a discussion around should we do this at all or not. Now, if you refer back to analytics, so under goals, conversions, you'll find multi-channel funnels and look at top conversion path. You'll start seeing how these different channels actually play together. So most common is that you'll see display being the first step, and then the last step being something on search or direct traffic. It's quite likely to happen that way. Now, not only is this important in the short term, looking at your campaign setup and areas you can go to in order to drive more volume, either through the display network directly or by hopefully generating more demand on search and capturing it that way. This is actually the first step for you to look at when you start discussing attribution internally. Because from here, you'll get a sense of what value is a certain channel, be it display or be it social or even email delivering. And how should we then accredit those channels with the revenue that they generate at the end of the day? So again, something to come back to quite often and have a look at if you run a display push, for example, how has it affected conversion paths? Another thing to highlight from here is the time lag report. So earlier I spoke about the remarketing campaign where we might want to look at having it pause for a few days or a certain number of impressions, whatever that time range may be. Then this would be the place to go to see what's actually happening in other areas of the business. So are those impressions we're delivering still bringing in then, for example, organic or direct traffic that converts? So again, very straightforward report, but can be very, very insightful when you deep dive into it and attach it to what you're doing outside of AdWords. Next up, the area to look at is, again, the users. So I've spoken a lot about the site, I've spoken a lot about your campaigns, but what we can't forget is that at the end of the day, the users are people as well. So we can actually start collecting data on who they are, and that's done with a code change in the analytics tag, or if you're using Google Tag Manager, then it's just a checkbox. So again, have a chat with your account management team, see how they can help you implement this and get it up and running. Now the data you'll get is not only a gender and age breakdown, but you'll actually start seeing their interests based on their browsers. So what makes this so actionable is that these interests are exactly the same as you'll find in AdWords. So you could use this data to start targeting similar users and try to push in more of those types of users or users interested in certain things or in the market for certain things to your site in hopes to drive your conversions. But there is a better way to do that, at least in my opinion. That's by using segmentation. So when you go to plus new segment, there are already existing segments that you can just apply on top of your own data. One of them is converters. So when you apply that filter on, you'll get the same info as you just saw there, but you'll get it in comparison for your average visitor and then the converting visitor specifically. Usually what I find in there is that the interests and in-market segments are exactly the same, but they're in a slightly different order. So that helps me then look at how should GDN campaigns be prioritizing their targeting options in order to drive more of the users who actually then convert or take whatever action that is valuable for me on the site. So again, what I would suggest that you do is have a look at these segments that are already in there and see what could help you define or answer certain KPIs that you might be measured against, and do that based on what's actually happening on your site. But we don't have to stick with these predefined segments. We can actually create our own. So I've got a couple of examples here. The time-based segment is, I would say, specifically interesting for those of you who are running TV or radio. So if you can share that schedule of those ads with us, then we can help you create filters that actually look at traffic during or after that ad. So we can't, of course, say that it's only because of this one ad that traffic has spiked. But again, I would say it's a fair assumption to say that it's probably had something to do with it. So we often try to think of ways of connecting the digital world with the offline world, and this would be one way that you can do it. And we can actually take this a little bit further as well. So if you talk to your account management team, they'll be able to help you look at paid clicks through your campaigns based on time segments. So for example, what I've done with my clients is I've compared paid clicks to TV ads based on 10-minute segments in order to identify places where a TV spot apparently or in some way, shape or form has influenced a traffic spike through paid ads. So not only will this help you look at your AdWords campaigns, but hopefully it's going to also give you insight into what's actually working with the money you're investing in TV ads or radio ads, and how to use that better in order to then capture the potential of those ads as well. So it may be certain TV programs that you want to invest in more heavily going forward, or it may be a decision to pull out of some completely and invest in other channels. So very, very interesting, and definitely something that your account management team will help you with if you're running these types of campaigns. So how to set it up is in the new segment. You choose conditions, and then in this case, if the ad is running at 7:30 at night, you set hour equals 19, so 7 p.m. And I've chosen to see the traffic for the last 30 minutes of the full hour, so I've set it to equal or greater than 30 minutes. And then you save, and that applies the filter on top of your data. Anything you wanted to discuss here? Mm-hmm. No. So then, the next one. Now, I've already mentioned, for example, social media. So if you're running Facebook campaigns, it may be worthwhile for you to look into what is that traffic actually doing on your site. Hopefully, that's going to give you insight into improving your targeting, so cross-referencing with other reports you have. But also, hopefully, it'll give you an indication of how to change or optimize your messaging through those channels. And then looking at multi-channel funnels, hopefully those will start playing a bigger part in conversions that come in either directly or indirectly. So again, it's a template that you can use in the new segment view, where you just enter the campaign or the source that you want to track. And if you like, you could actually track this all the way down to keyword level to make it really granular. Any questions about that? So I've got one more. And with this segment, so high-value customers, I definitely recommend that you create a remarketing list like this on high-value customers or visitors that convert on several occasions, whatever makes sense for you. Because with that, you can then continue building that relationship with them when it's not relevant for them to buy. So rather than do it as that retailer I spoke about earlier and push a product I already have, then rather start adding value to the relationship. So bring up maybe some benefits of the product or other valuable bits and pieces of information that'll hopefully either bring that customer back earlier and to convert again, or will increase the value of that customer if they come back at a later time. But we don't only need to focus on the users or visitors that have already converted. If we segment by this and start looking at the behavior that they're showing on your site, we'll hopefully find some key indicators of behavior that we could try to get other visitors to replicate in hopes of driving up their average value. So again, if value is what you're looking for, then in the e-commerce tab, you can just add the revenue per user. I've chosen just at random that 500 would be my limit for a high-value customer. But again, the more you can share about your sales and your customer life cycle with us, the better equipped we'll be to then advise you on what you could be able to do and how you could be able to build this filter to better match your needs. But also, as you see here, you don't need to stick with revenue because this is an e-commerce goal. It's attached to products and such. So if you have, for example, an entry-level product, you could segment based on converters for that specific product and then see what happens next and try to take more users through that path. Any questions about that? All right. So last but not least, I want to show you a custom report that I find very, very useful as well, just to get an overview of what's happening with a business. So my aim with this report is to look at areas that are specifically profitable or unprofitable at certain hours of the day. So with that in mind, what I want to do and advise my clients on is, again, to use their budgets more in a more profitable way. So for example, in this report, what we see here is Indiana. Does it really make sense for my client to be visible if this was my client? But it's it's a demo account. But would it be really advisable for me to say that you need to spend more when conversions look empty? Personally, based on this, I would at least look into, would it be worthwhile to tone down their visibility during that hours and save that budget to push it into California at 2 and 3? Because apparently that's when a lot of conversions happen. So that's when it's really important for them to be visible. This doesn't, of course, have to be related to conversions or purchases. It can be relating to other metrics that you find most relevant for your business. So when we create this report, we have to go to the Customize tab and go to Plus New Custom Report. For this specifically, what I choose is a flat table report in which I add the dimensions, region, and hour. So I get the metrics, dimensions that I want, and then I choose the metric, which for me, again, performance, performance, performance. So goal completions. But maybe I could look at other things as well, like time on site or something like that, if that's relevant. The one thing I also always do is to just keep the data manageable. So, and this applies mostly to export campaigns. So I include a filter to either include or exclude specific countries. So in this case, it was data from the US. So I included only that. That then only allows you to basically treat each market as an individual market and make decisions based on data from that market only, which makes it more relevant. When you save that report and pull the data, you'll get a report like this. So from here, I tend to want to add a filter onto it to make it even more manageable, the sample. But then that, of course, has to be taken into account in the report that you get in the end and the actions you want to take. Now, what that filter is varies from business to business. So if you do choose to run this report a couple of times and play around with the filters, you'll very quickly develop a sense of what is relevant for you, and you'll be able to get better data for yourselves. Of course, you don't need to add it, and then you just get the raw data. Following that, I export this report into Excel or other formats that you can choose from the drop-down menu there. And then in Excel, I run a pivot table, and just to make it nice and colorful, I run conditional formatting on it. And that highlights areas for me that I need to focus on. So a bit more work with this one, but definitely worthwhile to run and then discuss when and where you should be visible and to what extent. So don't forget there the conversion path, which needs to be looked at as well, so that you don't, by mistake, cut off a really important hour that actually would lead to a conversion maybe in 2 or 3 days. So, but if you cross-reference everything, discuss it, then we'll gladly pitch in and give you our thoughts on it. And then we can always run it with experiments as well to see what the outcome is. So, to summarize, what I hope you'll take away from this is that there is a lot of data to be used. There's a lot of cool data to be used, but there's maybe a little bit too much of it. So if you analyze, test, and repeat, you'll only improve the quality of the reports that you get, and you'll be able to make more informed decisions on where to go to with your site, or with your campaigns, or even with other media that you might be using. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Are there any questions that you'd like to cover now? Any specific reports, any specific data that you might be interested in pulling? No? Nothing at all? Sorry, could you grab the mic, please?
Hello? Okay. So we have some videos on the website, and we don't really know actually how many people are clicking on it. And we are trying to find out how to track all the users clicking on the video. So I don't know if this is something that you can show me.
Yep, it can be done with events. So basically creating an event as a goal would help you track a user to actually watch the video. So I'll gladly walk through the steps there, and then I'll give you a few talking points with your account management team as well, so that you guys can work together in setting that up. And we may have some suitable support resources as well to provide you.
Thank you.
Oh. Anything else? Yep. Sorry, yeah, could you throw the microphone up there, please?
Hello. Before on that report that you were showing the different path with the different channels.
Yep.
And was display, and later was the first step was display, and later social media.
There.
Yeah.
There.
That one. Can we differ in display between impressions and clicks? Because I assume that also if someone is seeing, if a user is seeing an impression, it also influences if later he's going to the website.
Yep. If I remember correctly, there's a beta that would be able to track impressions as well, but this report specifically is clicks.
Clicks. All right. Yeah. And can we also link this report with the user behavior in the website, like time spent, not only conversions, but also the time that they spend, and all this?
Yeah, so you could build a segment based on that.
Okay.
So if we go back to here, then, well, there's behavior, the tab that you could use, the third one from the top. Or then you can just use conditions and sequences to build out whatever segment is relevant for you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Everyone keen on getting a head start on the other group for lunch? Cool. In that case, that's all for me. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you found this useful.